It's been over a year since Russia invaded Ukraine and threw the world into a war that in prior generations would have been a localized tragedy, but now is a tragedy of global importance. Since then, a book by Peter Zeihan has been published that seems perfectly timed for this conflict of nations. The End of the World is Just Beginning is Peter Zeihan's new book that was released in mid-2022. The fascinating part of this book is how most of it was written before the war, and the publisher and author scrambled in late February 2022 to add commentary to keep the book up to date with the war. The resulting book is quite fascinating. Peter Zeihan is an analyst for a private geopolitical intelligence firm. He has a witty and somewhat snarky style as he entertains his readers or listeners of his audiobooks with surprisingly atypical analysis of the world. I think a huge part of what makes his work stand out is that it forms a contrary narrative to the dominant zeitgeist of politicians and CEOs around the world that often promulgate a worldview that makes America seem like it is in decline and China is an ascendant power. Not only does Peter rebut that, but he flips it and describes in declarative descriptions of the demographic and geographic reasons why America is actually one of the few places that will survive and thrive in the coming decades, and that China is going to collapse in the coming decade. The basic message of the book takes the demographic patterns of the various nations with significant global impact and describes how, for example, China, with its long-standing one-child-only policy and their preference for male children, it led to a current condition where there's not enough potential parents to maintain the population, and worse, the population of China with its current dearth of children will likely collapse by hundreds of millions as the current baby boomer generation of China is now retired and passing away. Europe is in a similar situation where, again, the lack of children is creating an epic population decline in the coming years that will result in massive economic retraction. Add to all of this the geographic deficiencies of a place like China, and he paints a picture of a world where America not only stays on top, but it thrives in the coming decades. And why America? America is largely unique amongst developed nations. It is one of the few that have maintained a birth rate sufficient to maintain or grow the population. Population growth is necessary for economic vitality. So much of economics is based on people needing to purchase homes, food, clothes, etc. If the bulk of the population is older and already has their home and isn't growing, then the economics are static, as in the supply needs aren't growing and therefore economic growth is static. If more people are dying from old age than people are being born, then it's even worse. The population is declining and therefore the supply needs of the nation are being reduced and therefore the economy retracts. Now you might say, but can't they just sell it to other countries that are growing? Oh, that's what Germany's doing, right? And here's the other part of the book, The End of Globalization, or the American Order. Zeihan describes how Americans are becoming more isolationist. With first Trump and then further codified by Biden, the American people have long chafed with the economic pain globalization has caused America. Peter explains that this is precisely because the American order or globalization was designed to hurt American economics in favor of helping the rest of the world after World War II in the name of guaranteeing a more peaceful order and counter the global march of communism. As the Cold War ended, while the order did expand into the former Soviet sphere, the necessity in the eyes of Americans to not just enjoy the self-sufficient bounty the North American continent affords America, but instead sacrifice to maintain a global order that favors everyone else, that necessity declined. Americans now are heavily favoring shutting out the rest of the world and just trading within our own space. The resulting end of the order will cause Europe, Russia, and China to collapse, as none of them have the capacity to protect the trade routes to maintain the beneficial export markets in developing countries. Now, as a general read, I found the book thoroughly enjoyable. Of course, there are quite a few spots that I felt the analysis was a little half-baked. But just like all humans, you aren't going to get everything right. For the most part, I think the analysis is well-founded and quite depressingly dark It's probably my optimistic spirit that causes me to think that the apocalyptic terrors to come are maybe based on Zeihan using an everything moving forward as currently is type of model. My main counterpoint to the thesis is my belief that American isolationism has surfaced many times before, but every time it became something that threatened to allow bad actors on the global stage to succeed, Americans acted surprisingly and overwhelmingly beneficent and restored global order. Whether or not the collapse of Christianity in America over the past couple decades has changed that equation, that's another question. But I do believe that Americans in the end will reestablish the order and restore peace and prosperity to the world. Peter believes differently and sees a world where global order falls apart and America retreats into its own prosperity and self-sufficiency. We shall see over the coming years. My recommendation, however, is read this book. It is an easy and quick read, thoroughly entertaining, if not also very informative. I hope you found this book review helpful. As always, I'm the Colorblind Architect. Peace out.